family, how you doing? Keep it high, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morse, Review Guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one, I'm going to be covering the new Apparat album, LP5. So Sascha Ring, better known as Apparat, is a German electronic music producer that has been at this music game for roughly 2 decades at this point. It's hard to believe, but he is a producer that started out with dance floor type beats, EDM type beats, and he shifted towards more ambient pieces, more IDM pieces, because he decided that he would rather work on textured sounds and kind of compositions than just beats. As a studio solo album capacity, this is his first album since 2013's Krieg and Frieden. In the same year that album came out, he released an album as Moderat, which is the trio made up of himself as well as the duo Modeselektor. But here we are, we're back with a solo album by Apparat. What's it looking like? Well, it's 44 minutes and it's 10 tracks. Electronic fans do not miss out on this because this is a beautifully textured album, and although I do have some complaints that we will get into as this review progresses, personally, I think that this is a really nice album. The sounds that he brings together are very impressive, and the most impressive factor in all of this is his instrumental repertoire. You have acoustic guitars, you have violins, lots of other strings, you have horns, trumpets, you have all types of synths and bass and percussion, electronic percussion. There's a lot going into these ambient techno masterpieces, and they're strung together with some really nice kind of attention to flow of the album. Even though a lot of these songs will take on somewhat different feels, it does feel like a concise project, and considering it's almost like 50 minutes, that is a very impressive thing, that it feels like it's progressing through an album and not just a bunch of tracks put together. Which is an issue that I have a lot of times with electronic albums, where it will feel like compilations rather than albums. The drony ambient synths on Voido, the intro track, are absolutely beautiful. This does reach a cinematic peak, a crescendo that really sounds amazing. At the end, when that percussion comes smacking in, love it. Love Apparat's voice on this track, really does sound absolutely gut-wrenchingly beautiful. I have to commend his singing. A lot of times it can be manipulated, a lot of times it will have reverb on it, a lot of times it will have effects on it, but it complements it so well. And despite the fact that his vocals are very prominent in the mix, I don't think it's a takeaway. You can still clearly hear the instrumental backing him. His vocals, if they were bad, would be, you know, really bad for this mix, considering how in your face they are, but they're not, because they're really good vocals. Alongside some nice ambient synths, Dewan has some nice percussion that rolls throughout the track. Really does feel reminiscent of some 90s and 80s electronic music for those of you that are familiar. I kind of like the foreboding, weird, freakish, almost alarm siren, but quiet sounds that open up this track, almost sounding like a heartbeat to some degree. The melody that these synths carry on over Apparat's singing are absolutely beautiful. It really does feel like this track, while it stays confined in its own little space, it feels like it is progressing. It feels like it's moving forward. It feels like it's going up. Laminar Flow petitioned to make this track longer. This is one of the most beautiful tracks on the entire album. If you pay your ear to this track, you will notice that this composition is super refined, textured, and very in-depth and deep. On the surface, when you first listen to this album, it's going to seem simplistic, but with repeated listens, you're going to understand what the genius of this album really is. Loving the subtle percussion and the melodies that these ambient noises kind of carry on throughout the track, and I love the piano. The piano adds this nice shimmering sheen over the entire track like a cloak, and his vocals sound wonderful on this track. They sound super close to the mic, almost whispered. Reminds me kind of a Sophie album. The streak continues with Heroist, where there are angelic synth chords going up and down and ambient noise in the background. Apparat seems completely just misery-filled, and he finds himself in a bit of a lower tone, but still maintaining that bit of a higher register that is present across this album. But I do commend his vocal range on this album. It really is impressive. He carries over from low notes to high notes, and it really fits in with these instrumentals. You can tell that because he's the one making it, he really knows the confinement, and it's his playground. His vocals can literally be whatever he wants, whether it be raw or manipulated, to fit into the confinement that is these electronic compositions, because he knows what he's doing. He made it. He's not necessarily having to create a vocal structure for a beat that he has or bought or got from some producer. He produced his own instrumentals, so he probably has in mind what he wants to do. Means of Entry is an absolutely beautiful interlude. Love the pianos on this track. Anytime the pianos come through, I think Apparat crafts something truly beautiful. Love the kind of noise that comes through at one point in the track, and although it's short, although it is an interlude, I do think it is a standout for how cinematic and epic it sounds. It sounds like it could soundtrack a trailer for like a fantasy movie maybe, or at least be part of like the sad part of a movie, or just a soundtrack. And then you go right into Brandenburg with some very Spanish almost seeming ringing synths alongside violins. Apparat sounds creepy on this track. I don't know why. He sounds creepy on this track and eerie. Love the drones that kind of carry themselves throughout this track, and I use the term drone lightly. This whole album has a droney feel, but in a beautiful way. It's not in like a drone metal type of way, but in more so the type of way where you're getting these ideas that are very strung out in a very electronic IDM type of way, and the more you listen to them, you're going to be like, this isn't simplistic, this is actually very, very, like, it's a web, it's complicated, it's complex, it's nice, it's like a Rubik's Cube. And on the subject of Rubik's Cube, that is a really, really good way of describing this entire album. Looks very simplistic, there's only so much on the surface, but when you try to actually twist it in a way to discern and understand what it is, you're gonna have some issues. Carant, or Carante, or however you pronounce it, it's probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. Super standout, super amazing. I love the chugging violins that carry themselves through. Makes it sound like a Victorian England organ, like house organ piano. And he manipulates his vocals in a way that they're not super manipulated, but they have this effect on it and this reverby electronic effect that I do enjoy. One of the most densely populated compositions on the entire album. A lot going into this composition, so many ideas, but the most stellar reasoning that this is impressive is because he's able to take all these ideas, all these instruments, and put them together by himself to make this amazingly explosive sea of just sounds. Bring your tissues to Outlier. Swear to God, this man, what he does with pianos and electronic music is amazing. I would not even really call this an electronic piece. This is more of an orchestral composition because the piano commands this, but you do get those ambient synths. He does like that ambient feel, and if you've listened to like any ambient like lo-fi beats to study to, it's gonna sound a little bit like that. Going into those higher vocals alongside these pianos and these synths, he makes so much out of so little on this track. Like, as I was listening to it the first time, I was like, alright, this isn't as impressive as the rest of the album. But as I listened to it over and over, I was like, wait, this literally is one of the best tracks on the album because he's stringing together so little to make this beautiful, beautiful track. Alright, I need some time to talk about In Gravitas, the last track on the album. 6 minutes, 13 seconds. It's a beast. It's a roller coaster of emotions. No, I'm jumping to the end already, but I love the vocals at the end, the kind of spoken word bit, the manipulated, deeper, growly vocals. Love them. Love Apparat's vocals across this entire track. They sound very gorgeous and beautiful, and they fit very well. They're not over the top, they're not too dramatic, they're not too overly dramatic, and the pianos come through again. And then some guitars give way to like some percussion-driven, explosive, kind of electronic dance music, borderline IDM, or I guess you could say IDM more than EDM, but love the middle part of this track. It is a bop and a half. Literally the biggest part of this album is ambience, but this track really doesn't heed to that. And I will say, that is one of my complaints about this album, is even though these are amazingly beautiful tracks, sometimes when they swelter, when they go up and swell and bubble and become bigger than they are, I wish they would go into that direction and be bustling. It seems like they build up that beauty and then just like fizzle out, or they go back down, or they go a little bit lower or quieter. And I get that I can't really judge it on that because that isn't this type of album, but I really wish that it is frustrating when you have tracks that swelter and then just fizzle out. But for the album, for this album as an ambient IDM album. God, this is an amazing album. Electronic album of the year so far. Sorry, Geschaffelstein, you're getting a little bit outdone here. Yeah, I love this album. I think it's a beautifully textured album. The compositions are super amazing. The more times you listen to them, the more you're gonna get from it. Electronic fans, do not miss out on this. You are definitely gonna want to check this album out. I'm very impressed by it. I'm gonna be giving this album an 8 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Please stay for the end screen. I'll link some stuff you might be interested in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. And I'll talk to you guys next time. But until then, my name's Jay Morris, the review guy. You know who it is. I'm signing off saying farewell.